What if the place you call home, the place that's supposed to be safe, is the very place where your life ends? What if your daughter, your sister, your friend never walks out of her bedroom alive? This is Crime Dopers. I'm your host, Wanja, a storyteller, a researcher, and someone who believes that every victim deserves dignity and every story deserves the truth. Today, we're diving into a case that shook Nairobi, a case that sparked protest, political statements, a death during demonstrations, and a nationwide cry for justice. The story of 18-year-old Abigael Wina Wanjiku, killed inside her home in Mwiki in a way so brutal, so personal, that even seasoned investigators struggle to describe it. This episode is not easy. Shouldn't be, because what happened to Abigail shouldn't happen to anyone. But before we continue, this episode discusses violence, gender-based harm, and murder. Listener discretion is strongly advised. If you need help or resources, check the episode notes for support organizations. Let's start from the beginning. Who was Abigail? To many Kenyans, Mwiki is simply a bustling, crowded Nairobi estate. Small shops, tight alleys, kids playing in the evening dust, a place where neighbors know each other, and where families, even with little, find ways to survive. And in one of these homes lived Abigael Wina Wanjiku, 18 years of age, a teenager with dreams just like any other Kenyan girl. Reports describe her as bright, lively, and loved, just starting her journey into adulthood. Someone who, according to neighbors, and I quote, always had a smile when she greeted you, end of quote. She lived with close family. She had goals, she had a future. But on June 19, 2025, everything changed. Let's walk through the hours leading up to the tragedy. Based on early police reports, neighbors' accounts, and news reporting from outlets like Radio 47 and Capital News. It's a Thursday night, a normal night, nothing unusual. But inside the home, something is wrong. Investigators believe Abigail was attacked inside her own room, not outside, not on the streets, inside the place where she should have been safest. She was stabbed multiple times, 5 times in the stomach, according to Kasarani Sub-County Police. Deep cuts on her neck, one ear severely injured, and a fatal blow that cracked her skull. Police recovered what they described as a bloodied cooking pan, believed to have been used to strike her. A cooking pan, something meant to feed a family, not murder a child. When officers arrived, they described the scene as gruesome, a word that investigators avoid unless they must use it. You can almost picture it, though you don't want to. No parent should ever see what Abigail's family saw that night. Neighbors say they heard noise, not a scream, more like a disturbance. Something off. But in Mwiki, disturbances happen all the time. It wasn't until someone checked on Abigail that the horror became clear. A young woman, barely 18, gone. Her home turned into a crime scene, her family thrown into shock. As news spread through Mwiki Phase 3, people ran out of their houses, phones lit up, whispers became shouts, and by dawn the entire neighborhood knew. Something evil had happened in their midst. To understand how Abigail's case spiraled into a national conversation, we need to walk through the key timeline, from the moments before the murder to the explosive aftermath that followed. June 18, 2025 evening. A normal weekday in Mwiki. Shops closing, kids playing, families settling in for the night. Nothing out of the ordinary. June 19th early morning, between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. According to police estimates and neighbors' accounts, something happens inside the home. A struggle, violence, a young woman fighting for her life. June 19th, 6 a.m. A family member discovers Abigail in her room, unresponsive, injured, bleeding. The scene is so violent, neighbors say the screaming and commotion tore the quiet apart. June 19th, 7 a.m. Police arrive from Kasarani police station. The officers immediately identify the case as homicide. Their first step, secure the house. Their second, search for the murder weapon. Their third, start asking questions. By noon, the news is everywhere in Mwiki. By evening, it's trending across Kenya. June 20th to 21st. The story spread across Radio 47, Citizen Digital, K24 and other outlets. The tone everywhere is the same. Another young woman. Another brutal killing. More questions than answers. June 21st, that's when the public outrage begins. Residents of Mwiki, especially young women, start demanding answers. Who killed Abigail? Why? Where was the family? Why was this allowed to happen inside her home? By this time, police have not announced an arrest, so tension begins to build. Let's dive into what the investigators actually did, because the truth is this wasn't a straightforward case. Murder inside a home often points to someone known to the victim, someone trusted, someone with access. Police begin to examine the scene. They recover a blood-stained cooking pan, Abigail's clothing soaked in blood, signs of a violent struggle, fingerprints and partial prints of the weapon, blood spatter on the floor and wall, a cracked mirror. They also note the wounds: 5 stab wounds to the abdomen, a deep cut on her neck, an ear partially cut, a skull fracture likely from the pan, defensive wounds on her hands. This wasn't just an attack. It was rage. It was personal. Whoever killed Abigail didn't just want her gone. They wanted her to suffer. The police begin their interviews and they interview her mother, siblings, neighbors, friends, and anyone who saw her last. But here's where things get complicated. Some stories don't align. Timelines shift. Statements contradict. Police aren't announcing suspects yet. They're waiting for post-mortem findings, waiting for digital forensics, waiting for truth to settle. But the public, they're not waiting. By June 22nd, only 3 days after the murder, the community has had enough. Mwiki residents gather in the streets, mostly mothers, teenage girls, young men, activists. Their anger is raw. Their signs read, and I quote, "Stop killing us. Justice for Abigail. Protect our girls." End of quote. This protest is one of the largest local demonstrations in Mwiki in years. They accuse the police, the justice system, the government, all for failing young women over and over again. And tragically, in the middle of this demonstration, something goes terribly wrong. Another death. Joshua Stephen Juma, a border rider, is struck by a vehicle during the protest. He dies instantly. Now there are 2 deaths in the same neighborhood within 72 hours. Tension explodes. Residents blame police. Police deny it. But the damage is done. What began as gender-based violence protest has turned into a confrontation. And suddenly, Abigail's murder becomes not just a crime, but a movement. As the story spreads, political leaders begin to respond. Nairobi Women Representative Esther Passaris issues a statement, and I quote, "We cannot continue barring young women. We cannot allow this cycle of violence to go unchecked." End of quote. Other leaders call for faster GBV case handling, better protection measures, and accountability from police. The media shifts to a familiar narrative, and I quote, "Another Kenyan girl, another preventable killing." And Abigail's name becomes part of the national conversation. Criminologists looking at the case say the level of violence indicates emotional connection, personal conflict, possibly jealousy or rage, a perpetrator familiar with the home layout, or someone Abigail may have trusted. Psychologists, however, argue, and I quote, "The brutality points to unrestrained rage. This wasn't random. This was intimate violence." GBV advocates state, and I quote, "The case is not just isolated. It's part of a pattern. And unless systems change, we will keep losing girls like Abigail." End of quote. When Abigail's mother receives the call, everything in her world stops. Her baby girl, her only daughter, is gone. The news spreads through Mwiki, through Kasarani, through every mother who's ever waited for her child to walk back through the door. And almost immediately, the fear turns into anger. Because this was not just an accident, this was not random, this was a killing you could see coming if someone had acted sooner. Residents begin to talk, Whispers travel, names get tossed around. A neighbor recalls hearing raised voices coming from the plot where Abigail was last seen. Another swears she had a woman crying, a thud, then silence. But by the time anyone gathers the courage to check, it's too late. And here's the part that keeps bothering me. The part that keeps people awake. Someone had something. Someone saw something, but nobody acted soon enough. Police arrive at the scene and right away something is off. There's no forced entry, there's no sign of robbery, no struggle outside the immediate space where her body was found, meaning Abigail knew the person she was with, or at least she trusted them enough to let them enter her room. Witnesses say the man she was last seen with was someone she'd known loosely around the area. Not a close friend, not a boyfriend, just a familiar face in the neighborhood. But here's where things take a turn. When officers attempt to track him down, he's gone, disappeared, like he knew exactly when to vanish, like he was prepared for it. And this is where the case begins to fracture, where truth, rumor, and fear start to blend. Some say he traveled up country the same night. Others claim they saw him boarding a matatu toward Thika Road. One neighbor swears he was hiding in a plot, waiting for the noise to die down. But police don't release his name, at least not immediately. And the public? The public is left with nothing but fragments. People in Mwiki are still furious. Women especially are terrified. Because this isn't the first time, not in Nairobi, not in Kenya, not in this generation. Another young woman barely stepping into adulthood, killed violently, another family left to bury their child, another community asking how many more. Social media erupts, #flood timelines, influencers, activists, students, mothers, they all demand answers. But the information is slow. The investigation feels sluggish, and every day without progress feels like another injustice. It's heartbreaking how quickly society can forget a victim if a story is not kept alive. This is why we tell it. This is why we keep saying her name. After days of silence, police release a preliminary statement. They confirmed that the scene showed no forced entry, the victim had injuries consistent with blunt force trauma, a suspect is known to them, and they believe he fled immediately after the incident. But they stop there. They don't confirm an arrest, they don't release details about a manhunt, they don't share why the suspect still hasn't been named publicly. And the silence? It worries people, because silence breeds fear. Silence breeds speculation, and sometimes silence protects the wrong person. Before Abigail was a headline, before she was a statistic, she was a teenage girl with dreams. She wanted to study. She wanted to help her family. She was close with her mother. She laughed easily. She was described as humble, respectful, and full of hope. It's important to say this clearly. Abigail was not in the wrong place. She was not reckless. She did not cause her death. Someone took her life. And that person, that choice, is the only wrongdoing here. Every victim deserves their full humanity back. And today, we give Abigail just that. Her death mirrors a growing crisis for young women in Kenya. Starlet Wahu, Rita Waeni, Agnes Wanjiru, Ivy Wangeshi, the many who never make the headlines. Each case is met with the same shock, the same anger, the same calls for justice, and yet the pattern repeats. This is not just a crime, this is a gendered epidemic. So here where we stand, an 18-year-old girl is gone. A community is grieving, a suspect is missing, and a mother is living every parent's worst nightmare. In the next part, we dive into investigation, the failures, public pressure, and whether justice for Abigail is possible. Stay with me. When police arrived at the plot in Mwiki where Abigail's body was found, the scene was already compromised. People had gathered, people had moved things, people had taken photos, some had even gone inside. Not because they didn't care, but because the community is used to being its own fast responder. The officers step into a room that is too quiet, too still, too full of things that don't line up. There's no sign of forced entry again, no stolen items, but there's a sign of a struggle, localized, intense, and violent. In the corner, the thing that every officer hates to see. A body, still, cold, life stolen too soon. Police quickly narrow in on the last person seen with Abigail. Not a stranger, not someone who appeared out of nowhere. He'd been seen around, he knew people recognized him, and on that night Abigail disappeared. Witnesses saw her walking with him. But here's the problem. He vanished. No phone calls, no social media activity, no visits to friends, no return to his usual spots. He's just gone. To disappear that fast, it's you either panicked or you planned. Police begin talking to people in the plot. Each witness adds a piece of the puzzle. A neighbor reports seeing the suspect enter the room before Abigail. Another reports hearing voices. Someone else swears they heard a cry, then silence. But there's one detail that still bothers me. Absolutely no one saw him live. He either slipped out unnoticed or he left long before people realized something was wrong. Either way, this wasn't random, this was very deliberate. The officers do what they can. They take statements, they document the scene, they begin tracing the suspect's known contacts, they review CCTV from nearby shops. But the truth is bitter. There is very little funding, very little manpower, and very little forensic capability for cases like this. And when the trail goes cold early, cases like Abigail's often sink into the ground. Police believe that the suspect may have fled to Murang'a, Thika, or deep into rural Kiambu. But without public pressure, a manhunt becomes a line in a report, not a mission. As the story spreads online, people demand progress. Activists speak out, content creators talk about it, women rights groups echo the same pain. And I quote, "Another girl is dead. Find her killer." End of quote. The pressure forces authorities to act faster. More officers are assigned, interviews increase, CCTV footage from broader areas is requested, leads are rechecked. It shouldn't take the public outrage to get justice, but sometimes, like in this one, it does. Despite all efforts, the suspect is still missing. No arrest is announced, and investigative updates slow down. Official statements became vague, then infrequent, then almost non-existent. And this is the part that breaks me, because families don't get updates, communities don't get closure, and victims don't get justice. And the story doesn't just end there because people, especially women, refuse to let it go. We keep saying her name, we keep asking questions, we keep pushing until someone answers. When you look at Abigail's story, you see tragedy. When you zoom out, you see a pattern. Kenya is facing a gender-based violence crisis, one that people have been screaming about for years. Abigail, Rita, Starlet, Ivy, and so many others, girls whose names never make it to the headlines. I feel like every week someone's daughter is gone. And the worst part, we know the patterns, we see them, we talk about them, but the system changes too slowly. Experts in criminology and social psychology say the same things. Number one, femicide thrives where predators feel protected. When people get away with it, they have no reason to stop it. Number two, victims are often young, trusting, and economically vulnerable. They're looking for opportunities, they're trying to survive, they're trying to build a life. Number three, most perpetrators are not strangers. They're acquaintances, lovers, friends, neighbors, just like Abigail's case, someone she knew, someone she trusted long enough to walk with. It is rarely about monsters hiding in the dark, it's about men hiding in plain sight. There are holes in the system, massive ones. Delayed police response. By the time police arrived, evidence is disturbed. Witnesses lose details. Suspects flee. Inadequate forensic resources. Some cases rely on eyewitness memory instead of solid evidence, and memories fade fast. Poor information sharing. A suspect can leave one country and blend into another. No alerts, no urgency, no tracking. Social silence. People fear speaking out. Fear being labeled as troublemakers, but silence protects killers. Mwiki is tired. Women are tired. Families are tired. And after Abigail's death, there was fear, real gut-level fear. Parents were terrified to let their daughters out of sight. Girls avoided walking alone. People whispered the same question, who's next? And then came the anger, the protests, the online hashtags, the call for justice, because the community knew if this case goes cold, what does that say about the value of a girl's life? A forensic psychology lecturer from a Kenyan university said, and I quote, "Femicide isn't impulsive, it's patterned. It's learned behavior enabled by weak consequences. End of quote. A criminologist added, and I quote, "When law enforcement lacks resources and public pressure is the only motivator, justice becomes selective." End of quote. A GBV activist put it bluntly, and I quote, "We are raising daughters in a country that doesn't protect them." End of quote. Those words stay with me. Her case brought three things into sharp, painful focus. Women are unsafe even in familiar places. She was not in a forest, not a secluded alley, not walking alone at midnight. She was in a neighborhood, a room, a place she knew. Killers can easily vanish, especially when law enforcement is slow and communities lack real-time alerts. Cases involving young, poor, or marginalized women often get less attention unless there is a public outrage. Justice should not depend on virality. Abigail's story didn't fade the way others have. Why? Because people refuse to let it. Activists keep posting, journalists keep asking questions, neighbors keep sharing eyewitness accounts. This collective pressure matters. It doesn't bring her back, no, but it builds momentum towards justice. Pressure doesn't solve a case, but it forces the system to try. Justice for Abigail is not just a verdict. It's not just an arrest, it's a promise. A promise to every girl in Kenya that her life matters. In the days following her funeral, community leaders stood in the rain, microphones trembling in their hands, saying the same thing, and I quote, "We can't afford another case like this," end of quote, but justice, real justice, cannot exist without truth. It cannot exist without accountability or urgency or resources, and most of all, it cannot exist without public pressure. Authorities continue to work with witness statements, phone data, forensic evidence, last known movements, digital footprint timelines, and testimony from neighbors. The suspect, the man she was last seen with, became the center of the investigation. Police secured warrants, they tracked contacts, they followed digital traces, they reviewed CCTV, some leads went cold, others reopened. The case continues, driven by momentum from the community. Every day without answers is painful. But every new lead, every new detail keeps the door to justice open. Abigail's parents said one thing that still haunts me, and I quote, "We just want the truth." End of quote. Not revenge, not violence, not chaos, just answers. Her mother described her as, and I quote, "a quiet, bright girl who never deserved this." End of quote. And her father said, and I quote, "All I want is to see the person who did this held responsible." End of quote. Simple, human, heartbreaking. If we don't learn from this case, then we are guaranteeing another one. Here are the lessons experts highlight again and again. First, the police response saved lives. Delays cost evidence, cost witnesses, cost clarity. Kenya needs a national femicide alert system, a way to track suspects quickly, to warn communities, to prevent repeat offenders. Young women need more protection online and offline because predators watch. They study routines, they target vulnerabilities. Communities must speak up. Silence is not neutral, it's complicity. Families need support, counseling, legal aid, public protection, because grief like this is heavy. It's crushing. Why must we tell Abigail's story? Abigail was only 18, a daughter, a student, a girl with an entire life ahead of her. She deserved safety, she deserved protection, she deserved adulthood, she deserved dreams, graduation photos, fast jobs, birthdays, laughter, love. She deserved everything a human life holds. Her story matters because it exposes a crisis we cannot ignore. It forces accountability, it pushes conversations forward, it honors her memory. And storytelling, honest, factual, compassionate storytelling is one of the ways we fight silence. If you're listening to this right now, you matter in this fight. You can help. You can share her story. You can push for justice. You can demand better systems. You can support local GBV organizations. You can protect the women around you. You can be vigilant. You can be loud. You can refuse to look away because femicide grows in silence. And silence ends with us. Abigail Wina Wanjiku's life was short. But her story is not over. It lives in every march, every protest, every conversation, every piece of evidence being analyzed, every court session that could take place, every community refusing to forget, every woman insisting on safety, every voice demanding justice. And as long as we remember her, as long as we say her name, she remains more powerful than the darkness that took her. This is Crime Dopers. Justice for Abigail, always. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to support Abigail's family, local GBV projects, or women's safety initiatives, check the episode notes. Share the story, talk about it, push for change, and join me next week as we uncover another case, another life, another fight for justice. Stay safe, stay aware, stay loud. Until next time.